We were on Lamed Hey and Aleph 35a. We're at Abaya Omar. It's about 10 lines down. Just going to review a little bit where we are and sort of be able to take off from there. So we started off with yeah, that makes sense. We started off with Rav Huna. Rav Huna has a very interesting law. Rav Huna has a concern. What's the concern? Every time a shomer, a watchman, he claims to be exempt for whatever reason, and then he says, "You know what? I'm going to pay you instead of making an oath." We're concerned that actually he's not claiming an exemption; he's forcing a sale. What he's really doing is he's keeping the lost object. You know, he says it was stolen. He says it was lost. He said it died. He said it was, it was eaten or something. Whatever it is, he really is keeping it himself. He wants the item. He's jealous of it, and he's paying. So even though we exempt you from what's called a Shavuos HaShomrim. A Shavuos HaShomrim is the oath of Shomrim, or the oath of a watchman, that he washed the item correctly. But the watchman still has to make an oath. Again, even if he decides to pay and not make an oath, he has to make a new oath. What's the oath? Shavuos she'eini b'shusi. I'm making a promise that I do not have the item in my possession.
Does this matter whether it's paid shomer or unpaid?
No difference.
Any shomer.
Not only that, it's any argument, even if it doesn't result in exempt. Let's say the point is, no matter even if the guy agrees to pay for claim damage, he still has to make an oath that he isn't lying about the damage just to keep the item, so he can enjoy it and benefit. It was yesterday, for example, I gave my watch to my Rolex to a watchman. The guy thinks it's a good deal. You know, secondhand market's pretty low now. This fell off of COVID. You know, there's a second market. This is an index. You know that? It's a stock market index to measure the price of certain very popular watches.
Okay.
So he figures he'll get himself a good deal. Answer is no. You got to make an oath that you don't have it in your possession. Okay. The Gemara had a question here. The Gemara had a question from an interesting Gemara where I borrowed money from a collateral from John Doe, right, from John, and there's there are three possibilities here. Either the collateral was worth the amount of the loan, or more or less. So let's explain. So if the borrower said the borrower says it was worth the loan value, the lender says it's worth half the loan value, then there's no claim at all. I should have mentioned also the collateral was lost. Right. So in this case, the borrower is claiming that the collateral covers the loan. The lender is claiming it doesn't. Okay. But in this case, because they sort of basically agree on the basic circumstances, the only question is on the value, then the borrower is exempt from any oath. There is no haidah here. There's no admission. He claims to have that the loan is completely repaid. Let's say, however, the lender says the loan is worth half the Rolex is worth half the loan, and the borrower says no, it's worth 3/4. So then there's an admission. Regardless, he admits he owes a quarter. In that case, we require a Shavuos bavametzia. Okay. Same thing on the flip side. The lender says the item was worth. The Rolex was worth equal to the loan. The borrower says, no, it was worth twice the loan. Nobody makes an oath. Let's say the borrower says it was worth twice the loan, and the lender agrees it was worth 1.5 times the loan. So in this case, the lender must reimburse the borrower for at least 50% of the loan, because the Rolex was worth more than the loan. So in that case, also you make a Shavuos bavametzia. And the Gemara points out who makes the oath, the guy who has the object, right? So the Gemara points out here that there's a difficulty here. The concern of why does the guy who had the object last makes the loan? Effectively, that means it's the lender because he had the collateral last. The Gemara says, why does the lender make the oath? The Brisa says because we're concerned that we don't want him to. The concern here is maybe if we let the other guy make an oath to its value, the guy who has the object is really still has the object. He's doing this just to make the guy make an oath,
Okay.
just to show everybody that the guy's a liar.
Mhm.
So we don't, because this guy can sort of invalidate the reliability of the opposing person's oath, meaning the borrower does not have the collateral. The lender can invalidate the reliability of the borrower by pulling out the collateral after the oath is made. Therefore, we say the lender has to make the oath. There's just one problem here. According to Rav Huna, the lender always needs to make an oath. The oath is, I didn't, so to speak, quote unquote, buy the collateral. I'm claiming the collateral was lost. Maybe actually I'm just taking the collateral to keep because I like it. I think it's a good deal, right?
Right.
So he would always have to make an oath that it's not in its possession. Well, if he has to make an oath that it's not in its possession, then who cares if it's whether it's the borrower or the lender that makes an oath? He can't pull the collateral out of his possession. Why? Because he doesn't have it. Because he made an oath that he doesn't have it. And if he does have it, then not only is he invalidating his friend's reliability, he's invalidating his own reliability. So Abaye Omar, one second. Yeah, Abaye Omar. So about 10 lines on the top of the page. Okay, so Abaye has a very simple resolution here. Okay. In other words, what was the proposition that I just made to you? I just said that the concern here is that the borrower will make the oath, and the lender will invalidate the reliability of the borrower. And the Gemara is saying, well, how could that be? Because the lender also has to make an oath that he doesn't have the item. So if he pulls out the item, he's invalidating his own testimony. So how would ever he pull it out? So the Gemara says it's a very simple way to pull it out. Just saying, listen, at the time I made the oath, I was completely serious. I didn't know. Now it happens to me, I found it. Now, the whole thing is a lie. It's not true. He did lie under oath, but we have no way of proving it. So therefore, he doesn't impugn on his own reliability because he claims at least quasi-legitimately that he didn't discover the item until after he made the oath. So he's sort of, slippery Jake, right? He sort of managed to slip away from the main question that really would exist on his oath. Okay, Rav Ashi Amar. So Rav Ashi reinterprets the whole brayso. He says, no, there's two oaths going on. Zenishba v'zenishba, zenishba she'eni b'shusa, v'zenishba Kamma hayeshava. The truth is, there are two oaths going on. The lender makes an oath that he doesn't have the item. He's not playing this game of stealing the Rolex by selling it, or covering his own obligation. Okay, one second. Okay, and that's like the opinion of Rav Huna. And there's a second oath that's going on. V'zenish b'Kamma hayeshava. And the borrower has to make an oath about how much the item was worth. When the brayso says mi nishbat chila, who makes the oath first? The one who makes the oath is Mal v'nishbat chila shema yishba zev yotzei lo asapikodan. The lender makes the oath first, so that he has to sort of declare he doesn't have it, and then the other guy can make the oath, because we know we're certain now that the lender isn't setting the other guy up for failure. Okay. Rav Huna bar Tachlifa Mishmei Rav Amar. Rav Huna bar Tachlifa says the name of Rav. Reisha to say Fatiyuf to Rav Huna. He points out there's another major problem with Rav Huna here. What's the problem? Selah Visani Olav Shtayim Hayeshava. The borrower says, I lent you a coin, but I borrowed from you. I'm sorry. The borrower says, I borrowed from you one coin, but the collateral is worth two coins. The haloimer, and the lender says, no, like el it was worth what the loan value was. Potter, the lender is exempt from making an oath, like we mentioned before, because there's no admission here. The lender is saying everything's settled. The borrower says you owe me the value of the loan because the collateral was worth twice the loan. Okay, so we have this debate here, and everyone keeps their money. There's no until anyone can bring significant proof. There's no reason for an oath. This is no admission. But 1 second, the mitzvah of Rav Huna, but if you hold of Rav Huna that the lender has to make an oath that it's not in his possession, so then you have the concept called Gilgul Shvuah. The Shtavanami a Gilgul Shvuah. Kamma hayashavar. Gilgul, the concept of Gilgul Shvuah, which we spoke about in the past numerous times. Gilgul Shvuah is the idea once you're obligated to make a Shvuah, you can sort of tack on as many Shvuahs as you want.
Oh, okay.
Right? We said any sort of suspicious event that ever occurred in your life that you want to think that maybe this other guy has to do with, you can make him make that oath.
What do you call that again?
Gilgul
Shvuah.
Shvuah. Gilgul.
Shua?
Gilgul. So Shvuah means an oath.
Right.
Gilgul is
They
like
make
a
major
like a
one,
roll.
Shua Palooza, in other words.
Yeah, that's a very good way to describe Gilgul Shvuah. Shvuah Palooza. Shvuah Palooza. Yeah. Okay. So he has a fundamental question. Why are you exempt from an oath? He does have to make an oath. Okay, so the Gemara gives a bunch of what do you think is sort of well, again, like scenarios where it wouldn't be relevant. It's true. In most scenarios, you would be able to make the guy make an oath. The lender would have to make an oath because of Gilgul Shvuah. However, we're talking about a scenario where the borrower trusts the lender on his collateral. Now, you might, okay, and therefore he doesn't have to make the oath. In other words, it's sort of the borrower exempted the lender from making the oath that it's not in his domain. So Gemara says, well, why doesn't, if they both trust each other, then why doesn't the lender trust the borrower about the value of the collateral? So Gemara says, he doesn't trust him. Well, if you're saying that the borrower trusts the lender, at least that it's not in his possession, then maybe he should trust him for the value. So Gemara says, he doesn't believe him. Why is it that sort of the borrower trusts the lender, but the lender doesn't trust the borrower? So the Gemara says, tumas yisharim tanchem. Okay, so let's explain this. The lender, the borrower already trusts the lender here. The fact that he's giving him a collateral means there's a certain amount of trust that the borrower has to the lender. Okay, it's the integrity of the upright that sort of guides them. That's what the verse is saying. Meaning, it's the integrity of the lender that brought the borrower to borrow from him and provide him with the collateral. However, the borrower to the lender, you don't have that same level of integrity. Wait a second. Over there, you have the treachery, and betrayal will destroy them. Meaning that there hasn't been sort of any advanced integrity that between the borrower and the lender, between the lender to the borrower, only from the borrower to the lender. Okay, Ahu Gavra the Afgid Kipi Gabi Chavri. A fellow gave his friend some nose rings to watch. Amarle Havi Kipi said, "Give me back the rings." Amarle Layadana, I don't know where they are. Hey Chesvina, where I put it. Also, the commander of Nachman, they came in front of Nachman. Amarle Kola Yadana Pshusi. Not knowing, I don't know. That's negligence. Tell this to my kids. Okay, it's still slim. Go pay him. Loy Shalom, he didn't want to pay. Also, Nachman, Agvi Lapadimine. Sir Nachman went down to his palaces and took them away from him. The Seifish Takakipi. Eventually, they found out where the nose rings were, and the Iker and the nose rings at that point had increased in value. So Amar Nachman Hadri Kipi Mariah Bahadri Apad Lamora. The rings go back to the original owner, and the palaces go back to their owner. So Amar Rava Havi Simne Commander of Nachman Perkin Mafkin Havo. We were in the middle of studying this parak that we're in the middle of learning together when I was in front of Rav Nachman and I heard him give this ruling. Va'amrilei, and I said to him, Shilim v'leirotz li shava. V'loyahaderli. I said to him, I said, look at the Mishnah. The Mishnah gives a scenario, right, where the watchman pays instead of making an oath. And what does he get for that? He gets the kefil. right? We spoke about it in the Mishnah. The watchman
okay.
claims it was stolen, right? And the watchman claims it was stolen. He says, I'm not making an oath, I'll pay. And what's the rule? He gets to keep the kefil. So over here also, the guy should get the increase in value of these rings. But Rav Nachman didn't want to answer my question. The Gemara says, he was correct in not answering. My time, one second. In the case of Rav Nachman, in the case of Hamafkid, the guy didn't take him to courts. He settled outside of courts. Over here, he had to bring him to court to collect the money. So once you bring him to court to collect the money, if the missing item in question is found, it would still go back to the original owner. If they settled outside of court and the watchman agrees to pay instead of making an oath in an out-of-court settlement, so then he agrees to give him the kefil. But if it happens in court, there would be no such agreements. If the owner forces the watchman to a court case to be able to collect money from him, and in court he gets him to agree, so then he doesn't give him the kefil. So Gemara says, remember the Sover of Nachman, the Shuma Hadar. Well, it seems from here that Rav Nachman holds that Shuma goes back. We'll explain in a moment. Shani Hasim the Shuma b'tois hava. The hava kibi meikar. Okay. So this is the question we'll sort of address in the next few lines. Shuma Hadar. What does that mean? So we collect, let's say Reuven borrows money from Shimon. Reuven does not have enough money to pay back. The court goes down to Reuven's property, and they start collecting his property to pay Shimon, I'm sorry. The court's collecting Reuven, the borrower's property, to collect and giving the money to Shimon, the lender. Okay. Now, eventually, Reuven gets the scratch off, right? A lot of money these days, the lottery ticket. He wins the lottery. He says, you know what? I'd love to have back my the house my grandfather lived in, you know? So I'll give you back the money. I'll give you the loan money and give you back the house. So that's called Shuma Hadar. That's one opinion says that Reuven is entitled to do that. How long of a window do you have? Well, in other words, like, could it happen 15 years later? We'll get to it in a moment. Okay. Now the question here is, in this scenario, right? Rav Nachman collects the house, and then what happens? A couple of days later, they find the rings, and he forces them to give back the house. So this would clearly indicate that Rav Nachman holds Shuma Hadar, that once we take away property to collect for a loan, we do return the property if the guy decides to pay back the loan. So Gemara says this is a little different because this is a Shuma B'tois. It was a mistake, meaning the premise of the collection was that the guy was negligent in losing the item, and it was totally lost. And the resolution of it was because it wasn't actually lost, so it's sort of considered a Shuma by mistake. We confiscated the property, but it was a mistake. Okay, 1 second. So therefore, there's no proof of whether, in general, we would return confiscated property at a later point in time. Okay, Amri Nahardoi. Now, the people of Nahardoi said, Shuma Hadar Atreis V'Yarchi. You have 12 months. You lose, right? Your property is foreclosed by the bank. You have 12 months to reclaim it. But Amar Amemar says, I'm from town of Nahardoi. Usfirali Shuma Hadar L'Olam. Forever. At any point in time, forever, the borrower can pay back the lender and collect back his fields.
Rabbi, page position, please.
7 lines in the bottom of the page.
Page
35a.
7 from the bottom.
The Hilchasa is the first one line. That's forever. Hilchasa. The halacha is Shuma Hadar L'Olam. The fact of the matter is that if your property was foreclosed, you have forever to pay back the loan and get back the property. We'll see in a moment. Just hold your horses for a second, because we obviously the next question is, well, what happens if he sold the property? Right?
Right.
Okay. You have to go and act beyond the letter of the law. So Gemara says like this: Pshita. Okay, so here's a complicated scenario. Basically, I borrowed money from Jules, and Jules borrowed money from Eric, right? So Jules confiscated the property from me because I didn't have any money to pay him. And then Eric took the same property away from Jules because Jules didn't have any money to pay.
Well, now I'm liking this more all the time.
So now what did I do? I paid back Jules. I won the lottery and I paid back Jules for the ticket for the property. I can collect that property from Eric.
No, you're
Why?
not.
Why? Because each of us is a creditor, right? I'm a debtor, but I'm saying Jules and Eric are both creditors. So each creditor has this limitation on his ability to foreclose a property. The limitation is forever. It can be switched back. So both of you have the same limitation. I can get back the property. However, Zavna or Taviyav Matana, let's say it was sold or it was given as a gift. These people are looking for the property, not the money, right? In the case of where you're both creditors, you're both not looking for property. You're both looking for money, right? If I borrow money from Jules and Jules borrows money from Eric, Eric and Jules are both looking for money, not for property. So therefore, we say that Eric would also have to give back the property to me. However, if Eric bought the property, Eric doesn't want the money, clearly, right? He switched it for property. Or if Jules gave it to Eric as a gift, then I would not be able to collect it from Eric. In English, the very simple solution is if you collect a property because you foreclose on a property because the loan wasn't paid, what you have an option of selling the property right away, and then if you sell it, once you sell it, it will never go back. That ends the ability for the owner to repay the loan and collect the property that was foreclosed. Okay. So Shamulol Ishava Insiva. So they confiscated from a woman and then she got married. Shamu Minod Ishava Insiva. 1 second. Okay, I think this means two things. If a woman lost property because it was foreclosed on, the property was foreclosed because she didn't pay her loans, or if she foreclosed a property and then she got married, Umason she dies. So again, the status quo of a regular marriage without any stipulations otherwise is that these properties are going to be in the category of what we call nechse malug, and the husband is going to inherit them after she dies. So he's a buyer. Because he's a buyer, so then he doesn't have to return it, and we cannot force. If his wife foreclosed the property, he does not have to return the property for the money because he's considered a buyer. And similarly, if the property was foreclosed from his wife didn't pay her debt, he cannot redeem the property.
Oh.
The Amr Veis Chanina Beusha Skinu Isha Machar Mitzvah Chaybal Meisa Bal Meitzim Yad Yad Halkuchas.
35B now, Rabbi?
What?
Oh, in 35B now?
Just in just a moment, yeah. We're just in a second.
Died. Okay.
Okay. The basic idea here is that a husband is considered a buyer of his wife's property, even though technically speaking he doesn't actually own the property, but she's not allowed to sell it. That's the law of Usha. As a woman gets married without any special stipulations, a woman gets married and she brings property into the marriage. The husband's able to use it and benefit from it. And if the woman sells it, the sale is not valid. Okay, because it's not valid, we see that he's considered sort of a buyer, and that ends the law of Shuma Hadar. Shuma Hadar means that the foreclosure could always be undone, but we said the exception of it being undone is when it's sold. And the husband, her getting married, is like a sale. Okay, now we're on top of 35B, like you said. Okay. Agve ihu b'chayve. Let's say, okay, so now we have another question. So in this case, again, I borrowed money from Jules, didn't have the money to repay. So Jules says, oh, you know what I'm saying? I need the money back. So I said, okay, well, I have this property and you can go take it. Okay, so what's the difference between the previous scenarios? The previous scenarios, he went to court. Over here, I'm consenting to a collection outside of courts. Well, does that have any, is that different or not? So one says it does go back. There's a my forever ability to undo the foreclosure. Or, and the other opinion says it doesn't. Let's explain. the opinion that says it cannot be undone. He says because we voluntarily reached a settlement, it's not a foreclosure, it's a sale. It's a sale. I'm selling you the field, and and the payment is the forgiveness of the loan. Because we didn't go to court, I did this on my own volition. According to the opinion, it says that I could always redeem it. He says, no, it's still called a foreclosure. Why do we sell out of court? Because it's less embarrassing to go to court. It's less embarrassing to settle out of court. It's more embarrassing to go to court.
You want to pay those legal fees.
Right, it's legal fees. Basically, it's the same type of collection effectively as court. The fact that I consented voluntarily just means that I don't want to be embarrassed in court.
Oh.
It doesn't really change any status. Okay, now we run into a problem, of course. What's the problem? So we've just learned. Okay, we've just learned that shuma hodar, that if the property is foreclosed, there's sort of a forever period where I could undo the foreclosure. All I need to do is pay back the debt. So if that happens, there's a problem here. What's the problem? So when does the creditor, the one who got the property, when is he able to enjoy the benefits of the property? Maybe I'll go collect tomorrow. I'll pay tomorrow and recollect. Get the field back. So you have three opinions. Rabba Amar Mechimati Adrachta Liyadei. Rabba says from when the adrachta is the collection document, once the document gets to the hands of the creditor, at that point the creditor can enjoy the property. He gets the benefits. Abaye says even earlier, the date that the date the collection document is signed, he has a right to eat the fruits of the property. Rava says the longest. So even after you have an adrachta, that's a collection document, you still have to make announcements. Let everybody know there's going to be a public auction, right? This is what they do. The classifieds, the newspapers, and whatever the legal requirements are. Anytime a property is foreclosed and it goes up for auction, so there's certain requirements, a certain amount of time that's waited. So basically, same thing here. Once you have these this time period. One second here. So when it was only after the time period of the auction is complete, are you able to collect the property? Okay. Okay. Now let's just explain here what this auction is. So let's explain it. It's not quite the auction. The auction here is to provide a possibility for the borrower to get more than the lender would otherwise give him for the field. So meaning the loan is $100,000. The field is worth approximately $100,000. Maybe it's worth a little less. So the buyer takes it. I'll get if the lender takes it, he takes it for the $100,000. Well, maybe it's worth more than $100,000. So we'll make the 90-day auction period. The minimum bid is $100,000. Anyone who bids over 100 gets to keep it. And let's see, maybe we could get more value out of the property for the borrower who's losing his field. If we could, then we're not going to give it to the lender. We'll give him cash. If we can't, then we give the lender the actual field. Okay, so from the end of that auction period, that is when the lender is able to enjoy the benefits of the property. Okay, next Gemara. It's an interesting story. So I rented an animal from Jules, right? And then I loaned it as a free loan. Again, this in Hebrew this works much better because shayel, like I pointed out many times, shayel is borrowing objects. A shayel returns the object as is. A malva and a loiva spend the item. Right? So if I'm malva from you grain, that means you're not going to get back the same grain you gave me. Right? But if I'm shayel from you grain, then you will get the same thing back. That's the difference here. So I rented an animal, and then I did she'ela. I was mashal it to somebody else. I loaned it out to you, to Eric. Now, the rule is that a renter has less liability than a borrower. So what do we have here? The animal suddenly dies. So what happens? The renter says, well, it died suddenly, so I'm exempt from paying. So Jules, you're the lesser. You're not getting anything here. I'm exempt from paying you because the animal died by itself. However, Vashoyel Eric is the borrower. He has to pay. He has to pay for it anyway. If the animal, remember, the only exception for a borrower is if the animal dies in the normal course of work. If the animal dies suddenly, he has to pay. So I actually gained
you in court.
So I actually gained the animal, right? I rent. It's not my animal. I rented it from you.
Right.
And then I loaned it out to Eric. Eric has to pay me back, but you don't get to keep the money. You got it?
It matters whether it happens suddenly or it happens, seems related to the word.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that
okay,
soon.
all right.
But yeah. Okay. Vashoy Shalom Seicher, and the borrower pays the renter. Turns out I'm making a business deal with somebody else's animal, right? I'm the renter and I'm lending it out to somebody else. I'm doing a business with somebody else's animals. Can't be. Eric would reimburse Jules directly. Rabbi Dovid says to Abaya, Michti, Seicher b'may koni lahai para b'shvua. So Rabbi Dovid says to Abaya, let's examine this. Seicher b'may koni lahai para b'shvua. Okay, the renter, how does he acquire the animal? With the oath, meaning by exempting, he exempts himself by making an oath. So in other words, the oath is what exempts me. Well, if that's the case, why can't the lesser tell the renter, the lessee, don't make an oath, don't do anything, just get out of here, and let me take Eric to the court case, right? In other words, the renter here is interfering between the lesser and the borrower at the end. So why can't he just tell the renter to step aside and he'll deal directly with the borrower? If the key component here is the shvur, the oath, which he has a right to demand and he has a right not to demand. So no, this has nothing to do with the shvur. It has nothing to do with the oath. It has nothing to do with the oath. Once the animal dies, then the renter is exempt from the moment the animal dies. Period. You can't. Therefore, the lesser can't engage directly with the borrower, because the lessee, the renter, he does interfere, because the moment the animal dies, he's exempt. It is true that he has to make an oath, but it's not the oath that exempts him. He is exempt because he's exempt from einus, from unusual circumstances, immediately, and therefore he interferes between the lesser and the borrower. Okay. So now we have a very interesting scenario. Rav Zera says, okay, this is a little bit complicated. Okay, try to follow along. Yeah, if we just finish this segment, the next Gemara is actually on the easier side. Okay, let's just try to lay this out. So me and you can engage here with a cow.
Okay.
Okay, so you started off owning the cow. Okay, so what did I do? I decided to rent the cow from you for 100 days. Okay, 3 days later, you decided you want the cow back. So you asked me to borrow it back for 85 days. Okay, then I decided to, so now you have the cow for the next 85 days.
Okay.
Right? Then I decided to rent it again from you, rent your borrowed cow back from you for 70 days. Right? And then you decided to borrow the cow back for 60 days. And I rented it back from you for 50 days. You see what's going on here? So effectively, what's going on is that you've borrowed many cows from me, and I've rented many cows from you. Now, what does this mean? What it means is that now the cow dies suddenly, right? You are a borrower at so many levels. I am a renter at so many levels. So I interfere at every single level because I'm exempt, and you are liable at every single level. Every loan that you took, you have to pay me back a new cow.
Mhm.
So you can be paying me multiple cows for the same cow that you actually owned initially.
Ooh,
You got it?
sort of, yeah. That's crazy.
He's utterly cowed by the prospect.
Okay, we'll get to the why this is wrong. This is the initial position of the Gemara. Okay, what happened? Yomi. I rented it for 100 days. Then Jules took it back for 90. Then I rented it again for 80. Jules took it back for 70. That calls for every time Jules borrowed the animal, he has to pay me a new animal, a new cow. Amr Ravacha from Difti Ravina, Ravacha from Difti says to Ravina, this makes no sense. It's just one ox. I love Afka Mischiris for Isla Shela, Afka Mishela for Isla Schiris. So Ravacha points out here that what's going on here is not that there's 15 loans. We just keep on undoing the relationship.
Oh, okay.
So it's really the same. I loaned from you once, you borrowed from me once. The other question is sort of how we're organizing the days. But it's not considered 5 different loans. It's considered 5 different loans, or 5 different rentals. It's considered one rental and one loan. So he said to him back, so he said back to him, he said, if the cow was present, you can argue that, well, it's just one cow and it represents everything. But now that the cow is missing, it's not present, so it's an obligation. And he argues because the cow is dead, there's no reason to view the obligations as identical. All one loan, all one rental. They're different separate obligations, and therefore you'd be liable for each one. That's the debate. Marva Rashi Omar, Ein le'aleim el shtei paras, chodesh ela v'chod d'schiras. Second.